We are 285 days away from the midterms, but today was a biggie. Today, President Donald Trump was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where he posted the following words. Quote, based upon a very productive meeting with the Secretary General of NATO, the framework of a future deal on Greenland has been reached, and he would not be enacting new tariffs February 1st. A NATO spokesperson issued a statement reading this in part. Negotiations between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States will go forward aimed at ensuring that Russia and China never gain a foothold economically or militarily in Greenland. Newsflash. That wasn't happening anyway. Even without specifics, the market rallied on the news. It all came after the president appeared to rule out using military force to acquire the territory in his address to Davos. However, the world leaders, they are not exactly reassured. And here's why.
Certain places in Europe are not even recognizable, frankly, anymore. I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction. Without us, right now, you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese. It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark. What I'm asking for is a piece of ice, cold and poorly located, that can play a vital role in world peace and world protection. It's a very small ask compared to what we have given them for many, many decades. But the problem with NATO is that we'll be there for them 100%. But I'm not sure that they'd be there for us.
All right, we need to level set on the stakes here. The president could actually upend the entire post-World War II order with his pursuit of Greenland, threatening NATO members if they do not give him what he wants. This is the alliance, please remember this, which has kept the United States and Western Europe relatively safe for almost 80 years. That is what is in jeopardy, so he can get, in his words, a cold piece of ice, which in my words, we pretty much already have, without the burden of owning it. Even though tensions appear to be cooling at the moment, here's the problem. The damage to the alliance and to the American-led rules-based order may have already been done. That is a problem. So let's bring in our nightcap to discuss. David Rode is here, MS Now senior national security reporter, Evan McMorris Santoro reporter for Notice, Dan Nathan, CNBC contributor and co-host of the Risk Reversal podcast, and Amit Baba, a columnist for The Independent and author of AmitBaba.news. Okay, Evan, I just can't say this more. We pretty much have everything we already want for Greenland. If we want more from them, they'll likely give it to us. So this framework, is it a deal or is it just smoke and mirrors after an embarrassing 24 hours?
Well, we don't know much about the deal yet, but I will say that this question that you're asking about don't we already have what we want from Greenland is what everybody in Washington has been asking for weeks now. One of my colleagues went and talked to the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee just last night or 2 nights ago. And, he's running around, he's talking about, we bought Alaska, that worked out. Maybe this could be something like that. But there has not been a big push from the Republican Party or from Congress to get on board with this. You've not heard from a lot of other allies that this is a great idea. This whole thing has kind of been this strange dance that now maybe ends in some new deal that means we already have a connection with an ally about stuff in Greenland, which we already have. So we'll see what it actually is, but it doesn't seem like it's moving the needle that much.
David, last night, Peter Baker said that you could make the argument that the NATO alliance was already over the day Donald Trump was elected in 2024. Given what we saw today, do you agree?
I think it was much clearer today, and I think Trump blinked and Europe won. I think Mark Carney's speech, the Canadian Prime Minister, where he called out Trump was terrific. And then when the European Union announced they were freezing negotiations on this trade deal, was another shot across the bow. And then the last force was the market tumbling. So I see Trump stumbled. The speech was offensive. He insulted allies. He insulted the people of Greenland, and he blinked. I guess this day showed Trump is not all powerful. That if you stand up to him, he'll back down. If the markets don't react the way he wants, he'll back down. And I just think it was very revealing what we saw in Europe.
What about embarrassing himself? He repeatedly called Greenland Iceland, and then his press secretary tried to say, no, he didn't, but there's video for the whole world to see. Does this not hurt on a whole other level our reputation, our standing as, he's viewing himself truly as a more powerful president than we have ever seen. And look what we saw today for 80 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, just like that lie about not calling Greenland Iceland, the whole
Which
speech.
he did.
Yeah, which he did. And they're just trying to lie to our face and say he didn't do it. The whole speech was equally delusional as that lie. And when you contrast it with Mark Carney's speech, it's two different worlds. You have a prime minister there speaking about the world as it is, and then you have a delusional Donald over here talking about how he won the 2020 election, how we have the greatest economy, we're the hottest country. I mean, we're hot if you consider maybe having a fever hot. I guess that's what he means. But it's unbelievable. It's embarrassing for the United States. You have this attack on NATO countries. NATO was not designed for an attack from within or a threat from within. And then you have Donald Trump here trying to re-hemisphere. And I don't want to, surprise you guys with my cliches, but this is in Project 2025. This whole re-hemisphering, this whole putting
Tell us,
resources.
we forget.
Yeah, page 184, Project 2025, re-hemisphering, talking about bringing industry, oil, energy over to the Western Hemisphere. Stephen Miller now talking about the Don Road Doctrine, basically conquering the whole Western Hemisphere. Venezuela is part of that. And that's one of the reasons why I think the needle moved in Europe was Venezuela showed this isn't all talk. And then I think you're right, David. He blinked because not just the bond markets, but the fact that Mark Carney stood up there and gave probably what I think is the most important speech by a foreign leader in the Trump era, frankly. And I think that's why he backed down. He was met with strength for once.
Mark Carney has never looked so cool in his whole dang life.
It wasn't the markets. I'll just be really, we've got to go back to April, May. There was real volatility, right?
We're going to dig deep in the markets in the next
but what I'm saying
yes.
is, I don't think it was the markets. I really do think it was like this unified front that we saw amongst these world leaders, right? And when you know a little bit about Donald Trump, and you guys know a lot more than I do from a political standpoint, all you have to do is really stand up to him. And almost every situation he has backed down. I know that taco thing, it is what it is. That thing is actually in the fabric of market participants' brains right now. So it's not something
But for those who say, listen, there are those rare earth minerals, there's something to it.
There is. I mean, look at what we need from China, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But at the end of the day, we're told that there's rare earths down there in, Maduro land or ex-Maduro land there, Venezuela. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just one distraction after another, and it was the very thing that actually wasn't meant to be in this administration. It doesn't really speak to America first. I think you can say, well, if we need this and we need that, then we should go out and do it with some form of power. But that's just, it's not what the American people want. It's not polling particularly well either.
Amit's right, though, too, because, this was a big part of the first term, right? Was whether, were we going to stay in NATO? Was NATO going to stay around? Now the question is, will NATO want us to stay in it? Right?
They do.
They have been pushing this stuff against these order-based systems since they got in power, right? And now they do get brushed back, but you do have to wonder how much of the toothpaste is already out of the tube on some of this stuff.
Okay, well,
Russia
Russia
acting their own way
has been clearly cheering on this growing rift between NATO members over Greenland.
And what's amazing is just European public opinion. I mean, the President of the United States stood up there and said, we won World War II. You didn't. Hundreds of thousands of French soldiers died in World War II. Hundreds of thousands of British soldiers. As we were talking about earlier, Trump's like...
Russian soldiers as well.
Millions. And Trump's like, we saved, Greenland from the Nazis. What Nazi invasion was happening in Greenland? Nothing. It was all focused on Britain. And people live this. It's their family members, their grandparents who have died. And all these elected leaders in Europe, I think they know public opinion in Europe is completely anti-Trump, and they had to stand up to him.
But what's funny is many of these European leaders are not popular in their own countries, but today they increase their popularity among their people.
But why? It's just, why would you talk to that audience in this way? So insulting, so arrogant American, so ignorant, bluntly, about so much history and so much else. It was I think, a disastrous day for the president.